And this is for a beatification for Fulton J. Sheen. This is something people have been, I know, we've been waiting for this a long time. And as I mentioned earlier, this news has been rumored for about a month or so now that sometime in 2026, the beatification would be held, the cause would finally move forward. Essentially, the approval was already granted a couple of years ago, and things stalled out. In fact, it may have been several years before. I think COVID played a role in delaying things. Not particularly sure about that exactly, but I know that it's been delayed for several confusing reasons. EWTN News has a link about this that kind of goes through the timeline and clears up some of these details, but essentially for years it's been delayed, and now we're finally getting approval. The Holy See has officially announced that they've officially informed, the Bishop of Peoria, Illinois, that the cause can move forward, and they essentially just need to pick a date. Bishop Louis Tilka of the Diocese of Peoria has, been pushing for this. He's been a great proponent of the cause for Bishop Sheen, of course, and I think he said, as soon as Pope Leo was elected, I think he said, I'm going to go right to the Pope and ask him if we can move this forward. And now the cause has finally been approved to just essentially pick a date for the beatification.
There was for those who don't know, there was a big battle over the ownership of his body that became a massive delay in the canonization process. It was never in doubt whether or not he lived a holy life or anything like that. Those were never like part of. Sometimes you'll find that in the delay of canonization, someone being declared a saint. But this was not the case with the Archbishop Fulton Sheen. But the cause for canonization was first opened, I guess you could say, in 2002. So this has been kind of a long enduring thing. And for those who don't know, like I'm aware that different people have different knowledge regarding Catholic figures and saints and so on. But Archbishop Fulton Sheen, he was a really holy man. And also, what's interesting about him, despite, we think back in time and we kind of forget, but it's not that far back. And as a result, we have so much media from him because he used to go on TV and actually talk to people about the faith. And it's really kind of weird for us now because, unfortunately, our society has moved in a more secular direction. We're actually moving away from the faith gradually. But when he was on TV, and he was at a hugely popular show and was talking to people about the moral life and about how to live and about Christ and all these things to whoever was there and whoever would listen. And so many conversions took place as a result of him, and they still do. I know people who have converted to the faith as a result of Archbishop Fulton Sheen, and some of his writings in the early 1900s are still so relevant today. It's crazy to read that. Old Errors, New Labels, fantastic book, highly recommend it. And then there's a biography that was written about him by his niece. And she talks really on the more personal level about what he was like and what he encouraged. And it's really just kind of an inspiring thing. He also had like a holy hour every single day. And then he had his first sort of miracle that was attributed to him was when the parents of a stillborn baby, James Fulton was the baby's name, named after him, they prayed for the intercession of Fulton Sheen, and their son miraculously recovered, and the team of medical professionals agreed that this didn't make medical sense. And so whenever you have somebody who's up for canonization and they didn't die a martyr, we look for these miracles as proof, in a certain sense, of where they went. Yes. And so you had these stories that remind us that Christ and heaven aren't something at the long end of a journey that we can have any identification with, but that Christ reigns now.
Yes, he was present in our society only a few decades ago. He was on national television in America. This was about to be a blessed, and I would expect very soon to advance to a full saint, full canonization. And he was on national television for 5 years in America preaching. And some argue that, he was kind of softening the message sometimes. And that's kind of what he had to do in the middle of a Protestant country. He was softening the initial approach so that he could bring people in. That's essentially what he did. And he was good at that. He had several high-profile converts to the faith because he went on the air and he didn't hide the truth, but he knew what buttons to push in mid-century, majority Protestant America to draw people in and bring them to the church. So many people I've heard from Protestants who later on came to the faith, on their own pathway. But Protestants, decades later, still remembering, my mom used to have him on TV, or I remember coming across him on TV, really made an impression on me. This happened with someone in my family that for years they were a fallen away Catholic, but they always remembered Fulton Sheen. And those memories were one of the things that helped bring my family member back into the church. So his effect is far-reaching just for his evangelization alone. And then, of course, we have this amazing story of the miracle he works. And this is pretty quick work for a cause. Yes. There are some causes of sainthood that have been going on for a long time and haven't really advanced very far. And so this is opened in 2002, and about, 10 years later, just over 10 years later, we have this amazing miracle. And then there's, again, the dispute over his remains. There was an issue here with the two dioceses, and then his life was approved. The miracle was approved. He's going to be beatified. Then there's a delay. There were rumors that it was because of potential cover-up issues in his diocese, and then they cleared that up and said, no, this is never an issue with Bishop Sheen. This was just because we wanted the process itself of these investigations in the diocese to conclude so that it would not be, a shadow over his beatification event. That's the excuse they gave. But then it still continued to delay, and the diocese said that there continue to be many more miracles reported through his intercession, which is why I say I have a feeling it'll be very quick that he moves on to canonization. They'll get another official miracle approved, and then there'll be two. But now we've officially got the confirmation. They already
have a list of miracles to go through, which is really neat.
Yes,
And because what we do here is working in media, so I am often asking for the intercession of Fulton Sheen. So,
yes. Yeah, I would
not that I would see the miracle in the fact that we keep going.
Yes, I would not be surprised if he. Sometimes the Holy See does this. They actually officially assign patronage to a saint. There are many saints whose patronage arose from centuries of just common practice, popular cult of devotion to a saint. Again, Saint Scholastica is an example of this. She has this story of the weather intercession, and she becomes a patroness of the weather. For Bishop Sheen, I would not be surprised at all to see the Holy See officially declare him a patron of Catholic media or some sort of thing in a similar way to how Maximilian Kolbe is a patron of some Catholic media, especially radio. He's a great patron for us. I would not be surprised to see Fulton Sheen have some sort of title like that, especially once he's fully canonized. So a great story.
One last thing I remember was that from his niece in the biography that she wrote, she said that he spent his most time, he was known for his conversions. He was known for that, in part because he knew how to speak according to what people knew. So if you're speaking to a Protestant, he would speak very heavily on Scripture and so on, because he knew it well, because he loved. And she would say that when a person was an outright atheist, he really wouldn't spend much time there. But when somebody was a Protestant or something like that, that's when he would really immerse himself in it. And the reason was that he saw the faith as a gift. And therefore, he couldn't impart a gift. But if that person had received the gift of faith, he could take them and add that knowledge and help them to come to the fullness of it. Through Christ's Catholic Church. And I thought that was really kind of an interesting thing. And it helps us to reflect on the fact that those of us who do have the faith are in a really privileged position, and we ought to pray for those who don't currently have it.
Yeah, it's a big leap to make if you don't have at least that somewhat familiarity with what the faith is, with what the Bible is, with who our Lord is. Again, you may not have the true understanding of it, but if you at least have that opening, it's a little easier to get in. When you're someone who's completely in denial, then it's harder to get through. And we often see in stories of conversions that it takes a big switch, a big act of God sometimes even to turn that switch on to make someone, realize real faith. But, that we always have to be open to it. And you also have to know, as Fulton Sheen clearly did, when to move on, because you're kind of beating your head against the wall here. You need to focus on asking God to do more of the work here. You can't just rely on your own skill like he had. So.
Right, and then he did the holy hour to make sure that he really was there, spending that time.
I'm sure that was maybe bigger of a part than anything in the conversions he worked was that hour of prayer every day. Follow the example of Fulton Sheen if you can.